Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Seiker podcast with Sixth Sense Media. It's the show that challenges reality, questions that which we've been taught in hopes of inspiring a new direction of thought to bring about change. We make the paranormal feel quite normal and the supernatural quite natural. That's exactly what we aim to do on this episode of the Seiker podcast. Edward Riordan, the remote viewer who talked about his experiences remote viewing QAnon a few shows back. He's coming on the air again tonight. We're going to talk a little bit more follow-up to the QAnon stuff. We're going to talk about his experience remote viewing the Earth's core and the intelligence, the massively, wonderfully powerful intelligence that he encountered, the consciousness that he encountered during that experience. We also got some heavy doom and gloom stuff, some data that's come across Edward's feed, Edward's psychic feed as well. It's an important show as we're trying to piece together what the heck is going on, what are we building towards. I know I touched on it a couple weeks ago where it just seems like, not to be doom and gloomy, but like we're building towards something, and Edward referred to it as an event horizon. He said in one of his videos, the future is going to get us all. It is here. It is upon us now. And what's, as we were talking, what's scary is that we see these things coming. We're putting this analysis together. We're doing our research, and we say, well, I think this is leading to X, Y, Z. And then we get someone like Edward, among others, who does a remote viewing session, and we say, okay, psychically, here's what he's getting. But we can still, in our minds, feel safe. Because, well, I'm just doing analysis. I could be wrong in the way I'm putting the pieces together. Edward's getting psychic data. We don't fully understand where this comes from, so there's still some variables in there. It could be wrong. But the scary thing is that we're seeing things put into place, tangible, or what we can call INW, indicators and warnings, that are falling into place with the development of technology that fits the narrative of what we're seeing coming. And that is what has me concerned. So I want to get to Edward. I want to get to his content. We spent some time tonight going through the details, and it was well worth every second that I had him on the phone. I have one story in the news that I want to talk about real quick. It comes from futurism.com. The title of this article is MIT used a laser to transmit audio directly into a person's ear. Scientists have figured out how to use a laser to transmit audio ranging from music to speech to a person across the room without any receiver equipment, a potential breakthrough for the future of audio and communication. Quote, our system can be used from some distance away to beam information directly to someone's ear, end quote, Massachusetts Institute of Technology Research Charles M. Wynn said in a press release. It's the first system that uses lasers that are fully safe for the eyes and skin to localize an audible signal to a particular person in any setting. In a paper published on Friday in the journal Optics Letters, the MIT team describes how it developed two different methods to transmit tones, music, and recorded speech via a laser. I'm going to have the rest of this article linked in the show notes for you to review and look at. But again, what comes to mind, what I keep seeing is as technology is coming out now, I feel like the most wildest conspiracy theories are being proven. So they can put recorded audio, someone speaking, they can laser beam it. This sounds crazy, right? They can laser beam it into someone's head to hear it. Think back to a lot of the testimony with the MK Ultra, the EMF weapons, the ELF weapons, the mind control. They're saying, I hear like a recording or I hear a voice being beamed into my head. I wouldn't be surprised if this technology has been out for a long time. Who knows? They could have this technology on satellites. They could have. I'm speculating here, but when you think about it, the tech that's coming out today not only is giving us indicators and warnings of what may be coming in the future, but I think it's proving some of what people used to call the most wildest conspiracy theories of the past. And for those that have experienced the mind control stuff, I think this should serve as some validation, some vindication that what you are saying is possible, and it's happening now in front of us, before our eyes. It's an exciting time to be alive. It's a scary time to be alive. But again, if we use this technology responsibly, we could really benefit from it. But are we mature enough to handle this type of technology responsibly? That I don't know. That's the big question. That's something that we need to talk about, my friends. I'm not going to spend any more time on this. I'll have this linked in the show notes at sixcentsmedia.net. Make sure you check it out. All right, one more article that I want to cover that I think is important. This is up at sixcentsmedia.net. Ray Davis put this out just the other day. YouTube is increasing its censorship again, is the title of the article. And I'll have this linked in the show notes, but you can find it at Six Sense Media. I'm going to read some of what Ray wrote. These large social media platforms have become nothing but censorship platforms. If you question official narratives, regardless of how often they're later proven to be wrong or lies, these platforms are going to target you. It's that simple. The latest example is YouTube again. In their official YouTube creator blog, which he links to, the company announced it's again tweaking its hallowed algorithm for, quote, reducing recommendations of borderline content and content that could misinform users in harmful ways, such as videos promoting a phony miracle cure for a serious illness, claiming the earth is flat, or making blatantly false claims about historic events like 9/11, end quote. If that's not firing a shot down range, I don't know what is, but that we see who they're targeting here. People that are searching for truth, the truth seekers out there. Ray goes on to talk about this. He's got some great information, some great things to ponder in this that I would love for you to look at. I'll have this linked. It'll be in the show notes. It'll be in the Seiker newsletter. And it's up at sixcentsmedia.net right now if you want to go check it out. And you can see the links to what YouTube's doing. Ray says it all the time, though. He talks about YouTube needs to serve as the town square where free speech should now be protected, because we don't have necessarily the town hall meetings anymore publicly. I mean, they have them, but YouTube has that platform, and he's hoping, and I agree, maybe the Supreme Court will step in and do its job at some point and say, free speech needs to be protected on a platform like YouTube. Or we need to organize, and it's easier said than done, and I use YouTube, but we need to organize and just boycott it. But again, easier said than done. Something new needs to be created. I know I was talking with some of you in social media world out there over us creating something new, and I know that On Stellar is at Jimmy Church is working on a platform. I don't know the specifics of it, though, but anyway, we need to keep that in mind, which is, here's a shameless self-plug, why I encourage you to sign up for the Seiker newsletter. It's the best way to stay connected, to make sure that the algorithms don't filter out our content, because I can send it directly to your inbox. But with the way things are going, who knows? I may have to be sending out actual snail mail newsletters at some point just to keep this information flowing to all of you, or we can all just connect psychically and share data that way, which I say it tongue-in-cheek, but I'm also serious at saying that. I think it's an important thing to learn how we can gather data that way. Speaking of which, Ed Riordan coming on the air in just a moment. I had him on. We did a fascinating discussion about his content, remote viewing, QAnon. And we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. We're going to talk about what he encountered when he viewed and visited the Earth's core, the consciousness that he encountered, and some other important things that may be coming down the pipeline for us, my friends. His words, the future is going to get us all. It's here. It's upon us now. Not much more I can say. You have to listen to what he's experienced and what he's viewed. I'm going to get to it because it's an important conversation. So get comfortable, my friends. Take some notes. Write down some things that he says, because you're going to want to go over this. You might want to listen to this podcast a couple of times and let me know what you think. Let me get to Edward. Here we go. Okay, friends, I have Edward Riordan on the line. He is a remote viewer. He's been on the show previously. We had a fantastic discussion about his session, Remote Viewing QAnon. He's going to talk to me a little bit more about some of the follow-up to that. In addition, he did a fantastic session, Remote Viewing the Earth's Core, that really hit on a lot of points for me that I want to talk about. And then we have some other general remote viewing stuff we're going to get into as well. So it's going to be a fascinating discussion. Edward, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Dennis. Thanks so much for inviting me back on your show. I'm happy to be here.
It's always a pleasure. It's always great talking with you. You know, I always, as soon as we hung up the phone last time, I had 500 other questions. I easily could have kept you on the line for hours and hours. So I'm glad that we're able to do this again. So what's new and exciting in your world? I know you're with a crypto viewing group. Can you explain that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I got accepted onto a group with two of my favorite remote viewers, Dick Allgaier and Dan Smith. It is kind of an organization that got started up and focusing on very relevant topics, things that are happening now and will continue to happen as we go through kind of this sort of transitional time. So, yeah, it's me and Dick Allgaier, Dan Smith, and another fellow, Benjamin, who on YouTube has the name Matrix Portfolio. He is a very interesting dude and has a very interesting way of experiencing the timeline. And so we tackle all kinds of interesting things. We look at cryptocurrency. Mm-hmm. We look at future events. We look at some unusual targets too. So we keep it very well rounded, but it's a very future oriented focus.
It sounds like it. And now these are some big names in the remote viewing community, correct? I mean, I know through Farsight's Productions, Courtney Brown refers to them as some of the best in the world. That's amazing.
Yeah, Dick and Daz, like I say, they're two of my favorites, mm-hmm. and so and they're great guys. So to call them friends and teammates, I'm very happy about it. I'm excited. We do some really, in my opinion, we do some very important remote viewing work.
And I'd have to agree from what I've seen, and I'm not surprised that you ended up on a team like that by looking at the quality of the content and the data that you've been consistently putting out and sharing with people. I think there's some amazing things that are going to come out of this. Now, let me ask you, I've got a few questions just in general. With remote viewing data, how would you recommend we use this data? I mean, obviously, we don't want to just sit there and put all our eggs in one basket, just like if one person was to tell me something was going to happen, I want to evaluate that as well. But how should we process information that comes from a remote viewing source?
Well, like I said before, you take it with a grain of salt, but let me explain what I mean by that. Remote viewing is such a fascinating topic. So when people come upon it, it can be mind-blowing. And when you see high-level remote viewing work, it can be a little mesmerizing. There's a lot that we don't know about how we're able to acquire these perceptions and describe these things. We don't know anything, right. Really. Mm-hmm. All we know is that we can do it. you
right.
know.
Right.
But there's it's kind of like the quantum world. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to comprehend. And so if someone is looking at remote viewing data, look at it in context with other information. One of the things that is very important to me as a remote viewer is verifiable targets.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why they're so important is because it helps the remote viewer to gauge not only their accuracy, but where you can find the truths in what they're experiencing and describing. And like I say, it's very much like the quantum world. I'll give you an example. One of the big questions in remote viewing was, well, is it just telepathy? Are you reading the tasker's mind? And you know, what if can a remote viewer tell the difference between a real location or just something made up in somebody's mind? You know,
right?
And that's been a big question. I've proven that to myself in a series of remote viewing experiments where the tasks or the targets were just in people's minds, and I was able to tell the difference. That it was something inside of someone or a group of people's mind. That doesn't mean that I will always be able to do that. In those circumstances, I was able to. But the point is, we're dealing with something that is so unknown to us,
right,
as to how it works, and that kind of thing. And people who are looking to remote viewing for answers and stuff like that, just remember that, you know, us as remote viewers, you know, we're not saying we have all the answers. We're just people who are committed to seeking them out. We're committed to attempting to experience how we are connected to other dimensions, and how we can translate that into information that we can relate to in our everyday experience. So I don't know if that's kind of my long way of answering the question for you, Dennis. But
I don't think there is a short answer.
There's no short answer. There is no short answer at all. It's an ongoing, never-ending answer.
Right. Yes. So let me ask you this as a follow-up, because this is something that's always been on my. This was kind of one of my big questions that I wanted to ask you at the beginning of the show, and you kind of touched on it already anyway. And that's regards to a false signal. Now, is it possible, or have you encountered? Do you think either the technology exists out there in the universe, or the intelligence exists out there in the universe, where it can create some form of false signal, virtual world, dummy timeline that would then feed you data, feed multiple viewers data on that set for whatever reason?
Oh, man. I can't really answer that. I mean, anything is possible.
Right.
I mean, I definitely, I don't know enough to give you a solid answer on that. I think that, like in regards to like the Earth's core sessions, where, in my opinion, there are large consciousness fields beyond ours, and they can, and I believe they do, communicate with us. So in regards to that, I'd say that it's possible. The thing is, here's the thing. I had, I'll try to make this real short, but I had been asked to remote view a target, and the tasker was attempting to see if his intellectual data could be secured from a remote viewer. long story short, the videos are up there if you want to watch them. That's the DNA marker sessions. Okay. But here's the thing: is that there was a few seconds in there where I was drawn to a different target per the queuing, per the task that I was working within. But that was just because it was tasked.
Right.
If you have intellectual data and you're not thinking about, oh, maybe there's a team of remote viewers who are
right.
looking at this, then I don't think there's, in my opinion, there's nothing that could stop a remote viewer from accessing that. But then again, there are larger consciousness fields out there, and we don't understand them. So, I have to stay humble and say I don't know. I don't know the answer.
And that's a good answer, Edward. As much as we wish we knew, I think it's better to admit what you don't know, because then that still gives us some intel. A couple things on that. The reason why I ask is I look at, because we're going to get into some heavy stuff tonight, looking at our future, looking at our timeline, and I look back to when I was a kid. I grew up watching the Ancient Prophecies show, and it was Nostradamus predictions, and the world's going to end. And then I remember 2012 coming about, and was it Gordon Michael Scanlon was a big psychic back in the 90s who said these earth changes were coming. It was based off some Edgar Cayce's work. And some of it comes to fruition, some of it doesn't, and there's so many variables that come into play with that. Not saying somebody was wrong, just maybe some changes were made. But I also wonder if something is putting out these signals to give us the perception that something is bad is coming because of the reaction we then give it, the energy and attention we then give it. So that's kind of my thought on that. Is that possible? And obviously anything's possible, but just looking at the energetic output of humans as a species collectively. If we're all focused on an end event or something scary 10 years down the road or 5 years down the road, maybe there's a payoff for that, whether it happens or not.
Well, I think I think that if you're familiar with Cliff High.
I'm not.
Cliff High created a web bot program to scan the internet, and his notion was that that people on the internet typing and posting and doing all these things on the internet, there's a psychic signal that comes from them, and if you program your algorithms properly or whatever, there is a predictive signal in there that can be found, through high intense computer programs.
Right.
And he's had some points where there was a very good accuracy, showing that I think 9/11 was his big hit and got him a lot of attention because of all these spikes for that time period.
Wow.
So I think that our collective consciousness operates outside of time.
Right.
We have a society that doesn't condone focusing on that, or condemns those who have. And so I believe that's kind of shut some people down, at least in our society, until recently. But I believe that we have access to it, and I've proven it to myself many times. I've seen other people pull things out that were very impressive as well. And we just have the ability to do it. And why do we have? I don't know. Maybe we do live in a simulation.
Yeah.
and like in the Matrix or something like that, and be, there's a Merovingian or something like that.
Yeah.
And there's just some stream that goes through, and some people it's just turned up a couple of notches.
That would explain certain anomalies or things that we can't quite account for. I definitely have looked into that quite a bit. And I could spend all night on that thread, but there's so much that I want to get into. So I want to just get one more question to your, with your team that you're on now. What would you say is your ultimate goal of your team?
Well, the team is the focus is on what's coming our way.
Okay.
What we're talking about now.
Right.
Is really the focus of the team.
Okay.
And we are turning our attention towards it.
Right.
And getting, some good remote viewers with good track records, and kind of putting our perceptive, mind muscles together.
Right.
And see if we can kind of navigate through this.
Hopefully give us some usable intel so we can maybe sidestep some of these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to what's coming out. How can we find their data? Is this on YouTube, or is that?
You can look up It's called CryptoViewing.
Okay.
You can look it up on YouTube, and you'll find the YouTube channel. Dick Allgaier does those videos for that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Patreon page where all of the projects are available.
Okay.
And so people can find that either through you can look up CryptoViewing through Patreon and follow the links through YouTube.
Awesome. I'll have links in my show notes and in my newsletter, so my listeners can find it as well. Absolutely. I think it's important stuff that's coming out.
I believe so.
Yeah, absolutely.
I believe so.
So let's dive into some of these targets here. I know everybody's excited to hear follow-ups to QAnon, but before we get to that, I want to talk about the Earth's core. I think it's important that we get into this first. I don't know how, Edward, but I feel that this is an important target and somehow connected to this journey of data that you've been just gathering that seems to be, at least from my vantage, filling in a lot of gaps here. So you were tasked to view the Earth's core. Can you tell me a little bit about the target itself, what the tasking was?
Sure. Let me pull up the tasking here. Let's see. Find it here. 1 second. Okay, this is target 3983-1594. The essential cue: the current composition and structure of the center of the Earth, herein referred to as the Earth's core or core. The viewing parameters: the viewer perceives only the intended target as it is specified by this target definition. The viewer describes only tangibles and intangibles that exist related to the target in the intended and stated task time frame. The variables, this is where it gets interesting. This was set up for me by my friend Dustin Newcomb,
mm-hmm.
and he selected some very interesting targets. So here are the variables. The Earth's core, in addition to relevant aspects of the general target as defined by the essential cue, the viewer perceives and describes the additional tangential, that's hard, I just have a hard time with that word, tangential target aspect. That's not a word that I normally use. It hurts my time.
Right.
Any information regarding the geologic evolution of the Earth's core relevant to its current state, the current composition of elements within the Earth's core, the current physical structure and or physical characteristics of the Earth's core, the relationship to the external strata,
described as the outer core, Earth's upper and lower mantle, and Earth's crust, the complexities of the core's relationship with the star called Sun, centered in our solar system, the complexities of the core's relationship with other planets and planetoids in our solar system, the complexities of the core's relationship with other planets and planetoids outside of our solar system, complexities of the core's relationship with the center of the galaxy, or the Milky Way galaxy, the effects of the core's sun on the surface, land and water masses, on the inhabitants of Earth, the effect, there's a lot to this.
Yeah.
The effect the Earth's core has on the layers of atmosphere between the Earth's crust and space, the Earth's core relationship with electrical forces, gravitational forces, and lastly, any significant intelligent, spiritual, archetypal, metaphysical properties associated with the Earth's core. And I was able to experience probably about 60 to 65% of those elements in those sessions. So it made it a very interesting experience for me.
You sound a little bit low. Can you just get a little bit closer to your mic or your mouthpiece?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
I guess my first question is, you said a friend of yours, Dustin, tasked you with that. Do you have any idea why he asked you to view that specific target?
Well, in the first video for that, he recorded himself kind of going over why he selected it, but he was curious as to the kind of what the truth was, because there's a lot of theories out there,
right,
as to what the Earth's core consists of and all that kind of stuff. And also, he had the feeling that the Earth's core was kind of needing some attention, and it kind of was worthy of turning our attention to it and try to understand it, try to comprehend it, realize that we have a relationship with it, and I believe those were some of his motivations for it.
I almost wonder if his feeling was some kind of a calling out to him. And I know I'm speculating here, but it just makes you wonder because of some of the things that you encountered. Maybe the Earth was saying, "Hey, I'm here. Come look at me and tell people." You think that's possible?
I think it's very possible. I think he kind of hinted at that in his little video clip. It kind of was like it's time to kind of turn our attention and
right,
and kind of wake up a little bit there.
So you encountered when you were there, you were going through this target, and you encountered some intelligence there.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like?
Well, it was very interesting. Right off the bat, once in the first session that I did for that one, I was getting a very strong feeling of curiosity, not just mine, not just my curiosity. It was the curiosity of something else,
right?
And for me, curiosity is one of the greatest abilities of the human creature. One of the most powerful experiences that we have, and one of the most important ones that we have, is the ability to experience curiosity. And so I was feeling a curiosity coming from something else, and that really triggered me.
Yeah.
And because I'd have to translate what that means. I don't mean like how like a cat, the curiosity of a cat or something like that.
Right.
I'm talking about a force of energy that is like a gravitational force. It draws things to itself. It kind of latches on to things and then kind of pulls them in. And it was like it was recording things, and like a giant database of experiences. And it reminded me of the Akashic Records.
Right. I do remember you saying that. Okay.
That was in the first session.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why that was important to me. I talked about that in the video, but the reason that I felt that, and I put it in as an AOL of the signal, it was reminding me of something.
Right.
And it was reminding me of 20 years ago, I had 2 readings with a real Akashic Records reader.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if and she's passed on now, and I don't know if there are any left. There may not be any left. She may have been the last one.
Right.
But she was the real deal. And the kind of, the energy of her mind as she was working with me was reminding me of what I was experiencing in that session.
Mm-hmm.
So when that happened, I was hooked.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm going to enjoy this one.
Yeah.
Right where I'm in my happy place.
It sounds it. It sounds it.
Yeah.
So, what is that, in your opinion? What do you think that tells us about what this is? That it's recording. You said everything it pulls into it. Just trying to gather information. And this is why I wanted to do this before the QAnon stuff, because I think there's some parallels there. I don't think they're one and the same, but there's some parallels. What do you think this is?
You mean the awareness at the center of the earth, or in the earth?
Mm-hmm.
I think that there, from my session, I think it was 5 sessions, 5 or 6 sessions.
Right.
That there is an awareness, a very large awareness, that is the earth, and oh man, I mean, it's hard to describe, Dennis.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to even comprehend.
Mm-hmm.
Words really don't do it justice.
Right.
The words like curiosity don't do it any justice.
Right.
It's a magnificent field of awareness that is hurtling through space and collecting experience, and has allowed us to borrow some bodies
Right.
from its elements, to kind of hang out with it for a while. And we're not doing too good of a job in some areas, but that's my feeling on it. It's a giant consciousness, a giant awareness, and as far as my remote viewing, I scratched the surface, if at all.
Right. Right. So, but it's possible that this is this consciousness that then allows our consciousness to join it for a time and have our own experiences that we then share with this giant database of consciousness.
I believe so. And I believe that yeah, it's our experiences are being recorded,
Mm-hmm.
added into its experience as well.
Any idea why?
Whew, I don't think I went into that. I can give you my opinion.
Sure.
I had this thought. I was years ago as to why there's so many human beings on Earth, and I was just racking my brain. You know, why are there so many? You know, for every human, you just something has to be removed. It seems, you know.
Right.
You got to remove other life forms for every human to consume and exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering why, you know, why would that be? And I had this strange kind of sensation come over me in that, in order for all of the experiences to be had, that for some reason are required to be had, it requires so many billion human beings operating and having them. And, you know, be it 8 billion or 9 or 10 or however many we'll max out at. The idea was that there was some plateau of experience required, and it just required that many people running around seemingly aimlessly,
right,
you know,
right.
And dangerously doing them and creating them and having them, and you know, we have within us the spark of creativity,
Right.
And so we are constantly creating as well as destroying, and so we're creating a whole database of experiences that are, you know, it's the Akashic records. You know, that's
Right.
what they are.
Right.
You know,
fascinating. Do you think this is a natural consciousness, or do you think this is? I mean, in some aspects, it sounds like a machine.
well, I think it is natural. I think that I'll go by my sessions. You know, what I experience in my session is that the Earth is not alone.
Right.
That the cosmos communicates within itself, and maybe it's sharing those experiences with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was experiencing in that session, in that series of sessions, was that there were elements that were moving through the Earth, moving through our solar system, large fields of particles that either are moving through our solar system, or we are moving through our solar system is moving through its field.
Right.
One of the two or both. And how I experienced them, they were aware. There was an awareness in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I became aware of it, being aware of me, and there was a sensation of curiosity within that.
Right.
And again, I'm using curiosity as a I just don't know what else to call it.
Right.
I mean, what else do you call it?
Right.
You know, and that may be what permeates through the cosmos. And in that session, I was feeling and experiencing that the planet we exist on here, and in some small degree, of how it may be communicating with other bodies, either within our solar system or galaxy or beyond, and some small perceptual glimpse of how they might communicate. And it's so far beyond. It's almost beyond comprehension.
Right.
Our brains, really, I think we have a governor.
Yeah, we do.
They built a governor in us to exist here anyway, while we're existing here anyway. And,
it's funny. Just a side note: I was reading one of Ingo Swann's books, and he was experimenting with copper mirror and pyramids and magnets. And he says at one point he shifted all of his chakras to being wide open, and he was just perceiving everything all the time. Like, he couldn't look at anybody; he was seeing through them. He's seeing auras, he's seeing energy, and he had to go to another psychic friend of his who had to help close his chakras down. So it just triggered that memory that the governor of his got, I guess, knocked out of whack, and everything was so. And he said, I couldn't function. He said, I couldn't even step off the curb because it was so wild for him.
That's right. Yeah.
Do you think this is a benevolent, and I'm going to put it in simple terms, but benevolent, malevolent, indifferent? I mean, what kind of energy do you think, or consciousness do you think this is in relation to us?
Well, that's hard to answer.
Yeah.
In how we, as the kind of the values that we have created, as humans. I mean, the Earth is a very powerful force of life and death.
Yeah.
And when a lion chases down a gazelle and eats it, we've been conditioned to look at that in shock and say, "Oh, the poor gazelle."
Right.
How could that be? That it's so terrible.
Right. Right.
We're dealing with forces of life and death, and whatever those terms even mean. I don't. In the level of awareness of the planet, those terms are that's our kindergarten speak. That's our gaga goo goo words.
Yeah, you're right.
What I will say is it commands a high level of respect, the highest level of awe.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that's kind of one of the questions that has driven me, trying to understand why is there so much suffering. I mean, like you said in the beginning, and I said it in the last book I put out, in order for something to live, something has to die. What kind of design is that? What does that tell us about the designer? And that doesn't necessarily mean the designer is some sick, twisted freak. This could be a school where you have to learn difficult lessons, and that could be the lessons you have to, the jury's out for that on me. But I think that's an important question to explore. It's one I don't have an answer to. But I want to keep us moving because, again, that's another subject I think we could go on, and I want to talk about your poltergeist encounter. I just rewatched that again tonight, and then as I'm looking at your video, I saw Dick Allgaier had a similar experience. What, you're doing the session, and you said this feels religious, and then all of a sudden the lamp just comes crashing down on the board, and then that's it. You end the session.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, that was a very bizarre session. It felt right off the beginning, going into that one, it felt very different than the previous ones. Mm-hmm. And whereas the other ones were kind of, I was going into, subatomic realms, and I was going to macro realms,
Right.
For me, that's, like I say, I love those realms.
Right. I remember that. Yeah.
In this one, once right from the beginning of that session, I was perceiving that I was not only on Earth,
Mm-hmm.
but I was dealing with man-made things for the first time.
Yeah.
In the whole experience, it had an extremely different feel to it, and there was a location,
Right.
and when I was getting into I'll share some things with you about it here for the first time, and things that I didn't even talk about on the video.
Mm-hmm.
But it was as if I was perceiving like an intermediary group or element.
Right. Like that goes between you to them to the Earth's core.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Like there was a group or an organization or whatever you want to call it on the Earth.
Right.
That was kind of like an intermediary.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel good to me.
Okay.
That did not feel good at all.
Yeah.
That didn't feel good at all. And the fact that even by brushing up against it, something happened. But it was kind of that was kind of confirmation to me that, okay, well, I don't know who this is, and I don't know why they would, even brushing up against them would be such a big problem,
mm-hmm.
or why I'll say it to you this way, Dennis. If that experience of my lamp falling at that exact second,
mm-hmm.
falling direct, that I was drawing out.
Can you say that again? Because you just cut out, Edward.
Oop.
That's kind of odd.
Ooh. Yeah. Well,
here we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
What I will say is that because in that exact moment
mm-hmm.
that that I was hitting on something specific, that my lamp suddenly fell over exactly on top of what I was just drawing.
Right.
If, and I'm going to say if, because I don't deal in absolutes.
Right.
If something was communicating with me and telling me, hey, you're not invited here,
mm-hmm.
or, well, I'll leave it at that. You weren't invited, and we're letting you know. That's a pretty strong force to come up against.
Have you
I've
heard
thought
of
about that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have thought about that experience for a long time. I had people contacting or commenting saying, "Oh, that's when you should have really dug in deep,"
Right.
And,
easier when you're not the one doing it.
You know it, and you freaking know it, dude.
Yeah.
You know it.
There's
absolutely
feelings
true.
you get, and it's like, you know what? My intuition is what guides me, and it's telling me to get out of Dodge. I'm going to listen to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. If I'm not invited and somebody says you're not invited, well, then I'm obligated to say you're right.
Right. Right.
I'm not going to go kick my neighbor's door in and say, let me raid your refrigerator.
Especially if they can reach out and influence your physical reality. I mean, have you heard of that before? Have you encountered that or heard of other viewers that have encountered it?
Oh man, I can't really think of any right now.
I mean, Dick Allgaier just posted.
Be
he did post that he had a similar experience. It came up as a video to watch after I watched yours talking about it, and he said it was dated I think September 11th of this year. He was getting massage and he went into a theta state. He said, and all of a sudden it cuts to him with his cell phone video and he says, "Look, as I connected with something big. I can't tell you what the target is yet because it hasn't been revealed to me, but the curtain rod went flying off the wall." And I just
wow,
yeah.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, I'll send you the link to it later.
Okay.
But yeah, he talked about that experience, and I was like, wow, that sounds just like what happened with Edward. So, I mean, this is new. I mean, I've heard of viewers saying, okay, there's a presence here. I feel it around me. It's curious, and even somewhat communicating two-way. But to have our physical reality, influenced, that's significant, I think.
I think so too, and it's just in my point of view, there is just some certain levels of respect. The curiosity killed the cat is not a phrase to be taken lightly.
Right. Right. No.
And you just moving. You just respect is required, and I'm okay with that.
Right.
I've seen enough. I don't need. I've seen enough, man. You know.
Yeah.
I don't need to go kicking doors down.
Save that for the next guy.
If.
That's intense.
If they so choose,
Right. Right. I mean, I'm sure there'll be somebody out there that wants to go and give it a try, but. Fascinating stuff. I'm going to let that process for a while, and I'm sure I'll have more questions as it simmers for a while. But I want to move on, and just do some follow-up to the QAnon. You had reached out to me, I guess it was last week, but it seems like a month ago at this point. It's been a crazy week, that you had gotten some feedback. And DARPA, you had sent me an article where DARPA proposes giving, I'm reading the headline to it, giving life to an all-seeing AI that monitors the entire world. What went through your mind when you saw that heading?
Oh, well, I wasn't surprised.
Right.
It was really good feedback.
Yeah.
I felt, when you get feedback like that, it's there's a sense of relief, that you're not making stuff up, in your head or whatever. It gave me a sense of where we are in the timeline.
Okay. I'll let you know. Now, you mentioned the timeline, and in your 6-minute video that you put out as kind of giving that feedback, you said there's an event horizon that's coming. You said we have 3 to 4 years. Can you shed any more light on what that is?
Well, the details of that I don't have, and for reasons that I can't explain.
Right.
It hasn't been revealed to me, or I may not be the one to reveal them.
Right.
We'll find out. Other than the sense of perceiving that in those sessions that it came in a very unusual way. Of like kind of like 9/11, there was September 10th, and
Right.
then there was September 11th.
Yeah.
And we just transported to another, Earth Part 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so with this, when I'm seeing things like when I'm getting feedback like that, DARPA putting that information out, that came out on January 17th.
Mm-hmm.
And so having that or having that in my session in June of 2018. So we're talking about 6 months.
Right.
So getting feedback of that level within 6 months, for me, as I'm trying to process the information, gives me an internal feeling of where that stuff is on the timeline. And it's coming in quickly.
Yeah.
That was a 6 month turnaround,
Mm-hmm.
not a 2 year turnaround, not a 3 year turnaround.
Right.
That element was a 6 month turnaround. So to me, yeah. I mean, I got to be careful, with what I say,
Right. No,
But-
I understand. I don't want to back you into a corner.
Yeah.
But I have to ask.
Well, there's something coming. The world is, enjoy it. Enjoy it now. We're going in. We're going in. We're going into the freaking twilight zone. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's coming, and I'll continue to get feedback from at least what I saw in my little sessions and other things that I've experienced.
Do you think that it's tied to your QAnon data, this event horizon, or you think the QAnon stuff is going to capitalize on this event?
Based on those sessions, and then learning what the target was, I'm of the opinion that it's part of the event.
Okay.
It is one element of it, of preparation, so to speak, for it. So, is it connected? In my opinion, in my point of view, I think it's part of it.
Yeah. Small. Okay. Around the same time that last week, man, it feels like. Yeah. On a side note here, I all day I've been seeing memes saying, "Wow, January was a long year," saying how this month has seemed like it's drug on forever. And I thought, no, it hasn't really seemed that long. And then all day long, when I've been thinking about stuff, like you and I just spoke last week through email, it feels like it was over a year ago. It feels like it was so long ago. Have you experienced that?
Oh man, absolutely. I did a series of experiments called time sensations.
Yeah.
And the reason why I actively took that on was because I wanted to go into and experience time realms in between human events.
Right.
Meaning that, how I set it up real quick. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I was remote viewing a target that would be selected for me in the future. Okay.
Right.
But the twist on it was the tasker. When I did the session, the tasker I did not request the target yet.
Mm-hmm.
You following me?
Right. Right.
And so what I was wanting to experience was that range or that realm of quote unquote time before another human being became involved
Was
within
even aware
it.
of it, right?
Yes, yes, and it has a very different quality to it. Then it's kind of like the slit experiments. When
The double
you
slit,
focus
right.
on it, and that it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
But our my feeling is we're moving out. We're moving outside of time. That's my feeling.
When you're
We're moving
viewing,
outside of the confines of time. No, in general.
in general. Yeah,
I think that we're moving into outside of time.
I can understand that, because it's been different. That's all I can put into words. Is it just feels different. And sometimes it speeds up, sometimes it slows down, and maybe it's just because we think about this stuff all the time that we're more aware of it. But the fact that it's a meme floating around social media, I think other people are perceiving it as well. So let me bring us back to the depressing conversation we were just having. That enjoy it now. I have to ask a few more questions about it, and then we can move on. But and I remember the QAnon data where it was that signal that goes out, and just everything changes. Everybody's mind is affected by it. And I'm wondering if two things come to mind. I read that Harvard was approved for a chemtrail study, or chemtrail, to block out the sun or to reduce the sun's rays. Do you think that's somehow connected? I mean, we're talking about the nanotechnology and the disbursement of it, and people that talk about chemtrails say that the nanotech's in there. And I know I'm deep down the conspiracy threads now, but at this point, hey, I'll explore anything.
Well, I mean, I can't say for sure. I will say that in November of 2017, I had a very unusual experience of feeling a very strange sensation in the remote viewing project. It's called ominous feeling.
I was 5 minutes away from bringing that up, Edward. Oh my gosh, we're on the same page tonight. Go on. You beat me to it.
Yeah. And what I don't think I said it there, but basically what happened was I felt this strange vibrational sensation that has turned into an ongoing, unusual type of tinnitus. I have an ongoing ringing in my ears that changes tone. It's freaking weird. It's bizarre. But when it happened in November of 2007, it was so unusual that I felt compelled to turn it into a remote viewing project. I'm blind. I have no idea what the answer is.
Right.
So I'm still under basically blind conditions.
Right.
But what came through in that series of sessions was somewhat in the realm of what you're asking me about the chemtrail thing,
right.
and that kind of stuff. Because in that series, I was getting this type of organism type of thing that many people were commenting on, that reminded them of like a Morgellons.
Morgellons, right.
And I'd heard of Morgellons, but I never really researched it. But I began researching it, and it did look like that.
Yeah.
And the notion that these things may be coming in what they're spraying. The answer, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's compelling. The dots are very close to connecting.
And that's what's scary, is that when I hear your data, and I touched on this in the beginning of the show, it's getting harder to push it out of my mind and say that's just some wacky theory. That's just, in my head. It's getting harder and harder to do that because you get the remote viewing data, and then you get, like, I get a lot of intuitive thoughts where it's like, well, where'd that come from? Let me look into this. And then, oh, there's something to it. We're now seeing it in mainstream news articles, the technology that would support some of the things that we've been exploring and perceiving and feeling. And that's the scary part.
Right.
It's like right in your face. How do you what do you do? I mean, you're getting 3 to 4 years before this event horizon. I mean, what do you do with that?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I put out this very, compelling little thought video, and I took it down right away. I didn't want to keep it up, but it was regarding the burden of knowledge. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's like this type of thing isn't new. I mean,
no,
it's been injected into our thought realm with the stories of like Noah's Ark.
Yep.
This is a story about a dude who he saw something coming.
Yeah.
And
he saw it coming.
He was burdened with that knowledge. That's what his story's about. And that's in our collective consciousness. That's all of us.
You're right. You're right, and that that was a good way to put it. The burden of knowledge, because you can't share this with everybody, and yet at the same time you feel like I need to share this. I have this information. I need to do something with it. Otherwise, why do I have it? But I reached a point where I said, I don't like the term waking people up because I think that's condescending, and so my take on things now, the way I do the show, if you're interested, you'll find the show. I'm not going to shove it down your throat and say you need to listen to this. We're in trouble and the sky is falling. Right. If you're ready for this thought exercise, this spiritual journey, then you'll find the information. If not, then I don't want to contribute to that hardship.
Right.
It's tough.
Right.
It's tough though. Okay, let me.
I feel the same way. It's like, one of my purposes, reasons for being here, is to put certain things out, and I'll continue to put them out and let them speak for themselves. But you definitely won't see me on a soapbox.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It just it's not worth the emotional energy of the arguments that you're going to get into, and
no,
I mean, no. And you know what it's like when you go through a paradigm shift. It's traumatic. It's absolutely traumatic, and if you're not seeking that,
it was for me, man.
Yeah,
it was for me.
Me too. Yeah. Several times. You know, it's like, oh, I got this. I understand this, and then the floor drops out from under. You're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. Yeah. Here we go again.
You know it. You know it, man.
Now I'm just at a point where I just expect it to happen at different points in life, and you just got to roll with it. But that's the journey.
Yeah.
That's the journey.
Yeah, it is.
I wanted to bring two things I want to bring up. I want to talk about Farsight's data for HAARP, but before I get to that, I've been getting requests for information. You addressed it in one of your recent videos with QAnon. I know was some upset, some confusion, and people wanted clarification with the QAnon data, because I think the perception out there initially before your data came out was QAnon are these insider rebels who are secretly patriots trying to dismantle things and fight for the people. But your data may suggest something different. Can you clarify, based on the data you received, what it's telling you?
Well, based on my sessions, per that target, and the way that project was set up, which I believe I followed that line of questioning quite accurately. The Q phenomena is designed as another avenue of preparation for the world that is about to be handed to us. And I know that has upset a lot of people. I've had to delete many comments because I know people want to be, they don't want to feel helpless.
Yeah.
You know, the world, unless you live on a farm with no internet and no phone, and you're just farming and you're in harmony with the land, and you got a great relationship, and you don't know anything about any of this stuff, none of the stuff would make any sense.
Right.
But it's from my point of view, from what I experienced, it is another means of preparation. It's not designed to get us out of anything. It's preparation
Laying
for
the
what
groundwork
is coming.
Yeah. Sounds more like a Trojan horse almost.
Well, I mean, that's, that'll just that'll upset them.
Yeah.
Because people think they're being, they tell them they're being duped, they're going to get upset. They're we're insulting their intelligence. But again, from my point of view, it is part of the plan. It's not designed to stop the world that we're moving into. It's designed to bring a portion of those paying attention into it.
Yeah.
And
I want to touch on that for a minute because I know we just talked about it. That's where this conversation is just falling into place perfectly. We just talked about the burden of knowledge and giving that information that people don't want to hear. But our job, it seems, is to observe and report. We can put our analysis on afterwards, but you've been true to your craft in I'm reporting the data. Here's what I'm getting. Don't kill the messenger here. Our job, and at least I know my listeners, we're truth seekers. Whether it makes us happy or sad, we want to find the truth. And as those paradigms break down, the reason they need to be broken down is because we get trapped in our belief systems. And those shattering statements, because we're holding on, like you said, people don't want to feel hopeless and helpless. And that's a very scary, a very vulnerable feeling. But that's also an incredible opportunity for growth. When you sit there and you go, all right, I'm out here, and now it's sink or swim. You have a choice to make. You can choose to accept the data that you're putting out there, or you can choose to reject it. Hopefully you do your due diligence, and maybe you can find a bunch of sources that will counteract and contradict what you're saying. Then that's your truth, and move on. But if not, well, now what? Now what do we do? And I know with my research and my show, what I keep coming back to is we don't necessarily need a savior to come in, because we have this power within us that is untapped, and in a lot of cases, I think, heavily manipulated and hampered by some of the technologies out there. If we can learn to use our true power, our true inner sight, our true inner energy, then I think we'll find we don't necessarily need to be saved, because we can save ourselves.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And the thing is that as we follow along on the technological timeline, it's interesting. Like we were talking about time,
Right.
And I, in my point of view, we're not moving at at an organic time. We're moving at the pace of technology now, and I think that's why we're so blown out. We're not watching the crops and the stars. We're moving at the speed of the next iPhone.
Yeah.
And so we're getting blown out here. I kind of lost my train of thought on that one because I could go on that one.
Right. No, I understand. Go ahead.
No, well, help me get me back on track.
No, we
here.
were talking. Now I'm losing my train of thought. Two professionals, huh? We were talking about. Oh, geez, they got me. Maybe it's the nanobots. they got in my head. Whatever that was must have been an important.
They don't want us talking about it, man.
They don't want us to.
Oh well, here's what I was saying.
There we go.
I got back to it.
Okay.
The timeline of communication is moving to the point to where look at the history of communication.
Right.
From grunts to smoke signals to letters and horseback to telephones to internets and
right.
It's instantaneous.
Yeah.
And it's like technology is like its own entity. And we kind of tapped on this earlier.
Yeah.
This idea, like, is technology the alien force that has infiltrated Earth?
Mm-hmm.
And the computer may be the extraterrestrial, and we don't know it yet because we think we created it.
Yes.
Can
I touch on that for a quick second? I don't mean to cut you off, but before we lose it,
sure.
I had on my show last week Lieutenant Colonel Corso's son, Phil Corso Jr. I'm not sure if you're familiar. He wrote the book The Day After Roswell, a big book in the UFO field. I don't know if you've read it or not, but one of the things he said, he said he was one of the military personnel that worked with the technology from this recovered craft. And one of the things he talked about was he found these integrated circuits, which he then, through secret channels got into the hands of the military and they got into development, and that's where we got basically our computers from today, from that Roswell crash, these chips. And he made a statement in there, and he says, I often wonder if that crash was intentional and these chips were seeded here and to develop into what it is. And now what we're seeing is, think about it. You send, just like they say mushroom spores can survive through space, and anybody that studied mushroom intelligence and mushroom consciousness, that's what it says it does. It goes out and it spreads its spores, and then you learn from it, and now you've got maybe these silicon chips that go out, they crash, and then the society picks them up and they say, let's build something, and then we have built the infrastructure that will now allow for the intelligence that was out there to now come in, and it's a slow takeover. It could be a very slow takeover.
Yeah, we're going down the rabbit hole now, for sure.
Absolutely.
It's have you ever heard of John Lilly?
No.
I highly recommend checking him out.
Okay.
He is the inventor of the sensory deprivation tank.
Okay.
And he has some. He was also a explorer. He used in the float tanks. He explored his own consciousness along with the use of LSD.
Right.
So he was a hardcore explorer. He did a lot of things that the rest of us don't have to do.
Right.
And but he coined the phrase biocomputer in the 1940s as a notion And in his work in the float tanks, in the float tank with the LSD, claims that he came upon a solid state entity or a solid state consciousness, basically a consciousness of technology.
Wow.
And, you know, that could have been the LSD talking.
Could have
been. You know,
right.
Or it could be the technology. You know, whenever we get into this rabbit hole, I always go back to the movie Metropolis. I believe the answers are in that movie. I believe that movie was told us.
Which one was that?
That was the silent movie. Came out in like 1926 or something like that. And they were in this technological city. And it was about how man had captured artificial light, and there was, you know, and those who had done that were considered witchcraft. They were considered evil, and the other side of that, you know, we're trying to like figure out what they were doing. They were, you know, everything was being done in secret, but they had captured light. And they had developed artificial light, and the ultimate goal was then to create artificial intelligence.
Wow! Which
was an artificial robot that they unveiled at the end of the movie, and it's like, you know, they just showed it right from the beginning.
Somebody knew something. I mean? Somebody knew something back then.
Yeah, they knew.
You know?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Check that out. It's a silent movie.
Yeah, I wrote it down.
So you got to follow the subtitles.
Okay.
But it's absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah, I'll look for that, especially from 1926. Again, we could go on every statement. We could go on forever, I think. But I want to get to one more point. We got, you know, just a few minutes left on the show. Did you get a chance to catch the Farsight's Time Cross project on HARP?
No, I will have to admit I don't follow Farsight, so I don't know what they've done.
Okay. Their Time Cross projects now, they're doing like mini mysteries every month, and they had 3 viewers take a look at HARP, and they got some, it started sounding a lot like the QAnon data. Some of the things that came up was, you know, it was this highly advanced, intelligent machine that can see everything. It can see everything on the planet. It's trying to learn everything about everyone, which sounds similar to, you know, the Earth's core consciousness. But this was definitely technology. It's doing something. It's shooting something up into the atmosphere, and that helps it to learn and to process and to control. And then Princess Janae, I think it was Princess Janae, she said, I can't tell if it's trying to protect us or to hunt us. She couldn't get a feel for what it wanted, what its goal was. And then she was trying to look at another data set, another part of that target, and she says, I'm being blocked. She says, I've never encountered this. I didn't think you could block a remote viewer. I'm supposed to be able to see everything and anything, but I can't see past this point. It's just like I'm hitting a wall. And I saw that, and I thought of what we talked about with Q, and then 2 days later, you send me the DARPA stuff, and I'm going, all right, this is all, it's got to be connected if this is all coming out at the same time.
Well, you know, like, you know, the future's coming for us, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, you know, in the 90s, I, you know, as a, you know, I got a weird life, man. That's all for a whole nother show. But in the 90s, I got involved with, I guess you can call them like a psychic doomsday cult, you know.
Okay.
And, but the notion was to navigate through the future would require a fine-tuned, intuitive, to finely tune the intuitive senses to navigate through the obstacles coming. It's kind of like trying to run in between the raindrops.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if you know where they're going to drop, you can
dodge 'em.
navigate your way around them, kind of a thing. And that's what I'm still about.
Yeah.
And here now I'm in the CryptoViewing Group,
Right.
and that's a big part of what we're about. You know, navigating through. If you know the arrows are coming, and you know where they're going to strike, you can get out of the way.
Right.
And that's you can not only get out of the way, but you can be in on the other part of the valley, safely, securely, and healthy.
Do you think we have that data set yet at this point?
I think it is unfolding right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's hope so. Edward. We'll keep doing our digging and our research, and hopefully we can get you back on, and we can dive into that.
Let me say this, Dennis. Again, because I don't like to be all the doomy gloomy.
Right.
But it's like this. The animals felt the earthquake, and they ran to the hills.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They sensed it was coming.
Yeah.
And they ran to the hills.
Yeah.
And they did not get hit by the tsunami. Their sense is we have the same sense.
I agree.
Our scenarios are different. The tsunami that we're looking at isn't water necessarily.
Right.
But you can still head to the hills and be okay, you know.
I agree. And that's the hope, I think, that we can bring to this. If we can learn to listen to that inner voice. I know I did a show 2 weeks ago where it was my intuition was just screaming at me, where it's like, all right, I just can't ignore this anymore. I don't like to be a fear monger and scare people. I said, but I looking at different things, it feels like something is really building now. And I hate saying that because, you hear that every 2 years, something's coming. But I've been looking at end times prophecies my whole life because it's a guilty pleasure of mine. And this one just it feels different. It really does. And I think that's because we're seeing, the indicators and warnings unfolding in front of us from, quote, mainstream sources.
Right.
So the positive you're saying is we can listen to that and run for the hills and get out of its way. And I think that's very inspiring and uplifting.
And then once everything settles, be okay.
Yeah.
Be okay. You don't want to be the doofus on the shoreline going, I felt the ground shake. Gee, I think I'll run towards the water. In my opinion, nature takes care of those things.
That's evolution right there at its finest.
It is. It's frightening and it's beautiful.
It is, absolutely. Well, look, we're coming up to the end of our time here, Edward. Do you have any final thoughts and websites and things you want to plug for your crypto group again? And where are we at here?
Well, again, the CryptoViewing Group. You can look them up on YouTube and follow all the links with them. I have my own Patreon group that is kind of like my little remote viewing dugout kind of a thing. I haven't had too much. I've been so busy with remote viewing not only with the CryptoViewing Group, but I'm working another project with Dustin, and this one's going to be another. This one may be for another show, and I'm not done. I'm not done with it, but it's really interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah. So those things, and so yeah, everything can be found on YouTube, either on my YouTube or CryptoViewing's YouTube, and in my opinion, my feelings, we're doing very important work.
I agree, Edward, and I'll have those links up through all my feeds as well, so they can find it at, up at 6 Cents Media, how to find your content, because I think it's very important stuff. That's why I reached out to you in the beginning, because I think what you're doing is the real deal, and it needs to be heard by those willing to listen. So
thank you.
I appreciate you being on the show, Edward. Do me a favor, hang on the line. Let me just close out for a second, and then you and I can just wrap up real quick. So thanks so much, Edward.
Thanks, man. Thank you so much for having me back on.
My pleasure. All right, friends, that was a very heavy conversation that we just experienced here. It's going to take a while for that to percolate for me, for some time to process everything as well. Always enlightening to have Edward on there. And I want to stress, with remote viewing data, that's one piece of a larger picture. And when you're doing analysis, for those researchers out there, remember, it's not the end-all, be-all. What you want to do is you want to find those other pieces that either corroborate or contradict it. Find all of it. And then you want to evaluate the totality of the data that we have. If you have stuff that says, you know what, this isn't true because of X, Y, Z, but then you have 10 other pieces that say, well, it is true because of X, Y, Z, it makes it a little bit easier to make a decision. That remote viewing, it's fun to get into it. It's fun to get lost in it, because it's such a fantastic experience, even just hearing about it. But just remember, it's one piece to a larger picture, and we need to get that corroborating data. That's where those of you out there, the truth seekers, that's where you need to go out and find that information. Can we confirm this? Can we deny this? I know we may have heard some information that we're not crazy about tonight, whether it's about the role of QAnon, whether it's about the doom and gloom stuff that we talked about. That's okay. It's okay to, the truth isn't always something that we like to hear. Take some time to process it. And then we need to take the next step, which is, what do we do about it? I have the sense that something really is pending, something is building. I've had that sense for a while, and it seems to be growing stronger, as if we're getting closer. Edward's comments just kind of reiterate what I've been feeling in my own psyche. If you have this feeling, if you have this information, please get in touch. If you have suggestions on what you think we can or should be doing, send them my way. Let's keep this community going so we can share this information and hopefully find a way to dodge this one, or to move around it, or to navigate it, or just to survive it. But that's a whole other show, which I'm willing to put together. If you guys send me the data in the comments, let's do it. So please spread this as far and as wide as you can, this show, with anybody you think will listen. As we said earlier, don't force it upon people who aren't ready or aren't willing to listen to this stuff. We don't need to get involved in that fight. We got enough to worry about. But wow, this was an exciting show. I'm exhausted. I'm fried. There was some intense energy that came into this room before the show, and then during certain aspects of it. I suspect that I had some visitations at some point during this program, and I feel kind of drained from it. So I need to process that and kind of go cleanse myself right now as well. So forgive me if I sound like I'm half asleep. Wonderful show, though. Big thank you to Edward. Big thank you to all of you out there as well for continuing to tune in. Thank you so much. Make sure you check out Edward's content. I'll have the links in the show notes. I'll have the links in the Seiker newsletter. It'll be up at sixcentsmedia.net. Check out Ray Davis. Check out his affirmation spot with the Positively Flowing. He's got the 365 days of affirmations. It's well worth your time. Again, raising that frequency of positivity. I think it's a great way to put out a counter signal to the negativity that's out there. Ray has some content that can help us do that and continue to do that. Check out his book, Anunnaki Awakening. You can find links to it at sixcentsmedia.net. Lastly, you can get my free ebook, I Am Human and We Are Not Who We Think We Are, sixcentsmedia.net/I Am Human. That's all the time I have, my friends. It's been a great show. I'm Dennis Nappi II with 6 Cents Media, where small changes among the masses can have a massive impact around the world. I encourage you to be that change, never stop questioning, and keep an open mind. Thank you.